Our brains love familiarity and even the unhealthy patterns that are familiar to us. Our brains find comfort in that. And so, all of these things that perhaps no longer serve us, our brain is still consuming it like it matters, like it's important, like it's saving us.
The notion that we can be very, very comfortable with things that are not good for us simply because we know them and we're familiar with them. How do you step back from that?
Welcome back to Unapologetic Rabble-Rousers. I'm DocShellie.
And I'm Carla Lewis. Now, are you ready? I asked this the last time, and I don't know that you will be. But today, this session, we're going to be talking about the power of unlearning. And Michelle, I'd like to open it up with a quote that came from Amy Poehler. Now, she's an actress, comedian, writer, producer, and director. And I got this off of a calendar that was like input from badass women. But I don't think that was the exact title. But here you go. This particular quote, though, fits this topic so beautifully. It takes years as a woman to unlearn what we have been taught to be sorry for. Boom. So
That's so good.
Let's dig into this notion of the power of unlearning.
Yes, unlearning those things that just no longer serve us. You think about, I was thinking about this since we decided this was going to be our topic, right? So we grow up and we absorb so many beliefs from our families, from school, from work, from society, from whatever religious institutions we may have been involved with. Some of those beliefs help us, and a lot of them, they hold us back. We think about it. How many times did you question a rule or an expectation or a belief that you were taught? And you thought, do I even believe this? And so we got to unlearn some of those things. But that's why it's so hard to let go. It's almost like we've been programmed, not maliciously, of course, but we've got to learn how to rewrite those scripts that we've been living by.
And if you think about what was going on when those scripts were actually installed, because we received those at a time where we didn't know how to make decisions about or judge what we were learning. We weren't we did not have the capacity to challenge and say, help me understand why that is true or that's what's right. It just was.
Yeah.
And so those established these core values and things that at that point they just were, we didn't know how to think about them, but they influence us for the rest of our lives. And part of being the fish in the fishbowl and not being able to see the water we're in, this is about learning how to do that, learning how to understand what it is that's driving how we think and do and react and care about everything.
Yeah, learning how to unlearn, right?
Yes.
which is hard because I can't help myself.
I know.
Little neuroscience here.
Yep. Go for it. Love it.
Our brains love familiarity. Familiarity. I have a hard time saying that word.
It came out really nicely both times.
So our brains love that. And even the unhealthy patterns that are familiar to us, our brains find comfort in that. And so all of these things that perhaps no longer serve us, our brain is still consuming it like it matters, like it's important, like it's saving us. So we've really got to figure out, how do we unlearn these things that our brain finds comfort in?
The notion that we can be very, very comfortable with things that are not good for us simply because we know them and we're familiar with them. How do you step back from that? What's the trigger to be able to step back from that and say, no, wait a minute. Let's hold on here. This is something we need to take a look at. So how do we get clear on those things? How, even one, It doesn't have to be all of them. One at a time is really good. And
Yeah.
how often have we said just one little thing,
One small step.
just a little step? Okay. So, what
Have
does it,
you have you ever unlearned something because it
and
felt too ingrained?
I don't know what unlearning looks like. I
Oh.
know what being aware of something that doesn't serve me
Hmm.
looks like. It's like you can't unscramble an egg, you can't unring a bell. The stuff is there. It's there. Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't the challenge being that's there, I recognize it, and I am aware it's no longer serving me. And so now I need to develop new neural pathways and all of that stuff, the reactions, the knee jerk reactions to things, because that's how I've always done it. I don't know. How do you unlearn?
You kind of just described a little cognitive dissonance there, but I think
Oh, yes.
I'm such a nerd
I love your
sometimes.
nerdness. Okay.
Yeah, I think that cognitive dissonance is a big barrier to unlearning. I think it can be because it's uncomfortable to recognize and realize that something you believed in so deeply might not actually be true. So when you're talking about that thing that I now recognize probably doesn't is maybe isn't true now, it was true then, it might not be true. That can feel uncomfortable.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we struggle to let it go. We struggle to move past it, to unlearn it, right? I'm trying to think of, and I don't know if this is necessarily unlearning. It's more of letting go of a really bad habit, and that is drinking Coca-Cola, my nemesis for decades. Decades. It was my drug of choice, literally my drug of choice. And if I didn't drink it for a week and I would have one, it was like, welcome
Oh,
home, my old friend. And I
yeah.
joke about that, but it really had that strong of a hold on me. And I was drinking 4, 5, 6 Cokes a day.
I remember while we were on the same team that you were getting ready to facilitate another glorious session of classes that you did. And you, it was not a text message, it was one of those, uh, whatever was the sort of like a text messaging service we had. And you said, could you get me a Coke? Absolutely. I'd do anything for you, right? So you came down from the 21st floor, went down, ran over to the whatever. But so I know about
It
how
was a real
powerful that
thing.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a thing. And it took a lot of effort, a lot of journaling, a lot of reflection, a lot of thought work, a lot of talking back to that habit brain
Mhm.
to say, I don't need that anymore. I can now, for the first time in my life, have a single Coca Cola and not want one 20 minutes later and not want one the next day. I can just have one and be done with it.
And that's because you've built the muscle. You went through the repetitive decision making and the, I'm going to use the word denial. You made choices that said, no, not going there.
Yeah. So if I think of that as unlearning that habit, it's a lot, it took a lot of effort. So I think there has to be some level of commitment to unlearning things that don't serve us. Because my brain was really comfortable anytime something stressful, something frustrating, something I was tired, something I didn't feel good. I had an upset stomach. I want to all those things are I want a Coke.
Hmm.
Coke could cure the world.
And we've talked in the past about that's so redundant. We've talked in the past. Anyway, we've talked about the fact that I smoked
We had words.
cigarettes. Yeah, we had words. And as
Yeah.
a smoker, a former smoker, recognizing that there are those things that say, there are these triggers that say, "Oh, you know what? All I need right now is 7 minutes of my own time. And that's, I'm going to, and that is represented by lighting up. For
Hmm.
you, it was about having a Coke, whatever it might be. the fact that we have these habits, back to that habit brain,
Mm-hmm.
that A plus B equals C. Event happened. I'm uncomfortable means I got to have a Coke. I've got to have a smoke. I've got to do
Yeah.
or think or whatever it might be. I would like to bring in a story I think I've shared in the past, but this whole notion of unlearning. And I was speaking with a group of women who were leaders in their own right. They were leaders. They'd been sent to this conference because they were leaders. And they were sitting in a breakout that was talking about how to become more successful in their bids to rise up in what was at that point a male dominated industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to them then. First, the number one thing being, you can't, until you give yourself permission to do what it is that you know is right and to be successful. It doesn't matter who else does. But the other thing I brought out was the fact that men, at this particular juncture, men had some things to unlearn about the role of women, the place of women in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
in leadership capacities.
Mm-hmm.
There were things they needed to unlearn. And that requires patience and grace.
Mm-hmm.
But it also involves putting energy into it, understanding the value of first recognizing that there's this gap between what used to be a truth, which I'm not going to get into the discussion about how true it was ever, but in this particular case, what was the reality
Mm-hmm.
and what was the goal? What was the desire? What was the opportunity? So that unlearning, that letting go is
Yeah.
what unlearning
So
is.
taking that situation, right? So the women had to learn that probably what they had been told is they don't belong there. So they had
Mm-hmm.
to learn that they do indeed belong there, while the men had to also learn they belong there. The
Yeah.
women belong there.
Yes.
So if I think about that, I'm just thinking back, like speaking up is rude is something that many of us were brought up with,
Yeah.
that kind of notion. The other thing I'm
Especially
thinking
as
of,
women.
yes, absolutely. The other thing I'm thinking of is that perfectionism. If I fail, I'm a failure. That
Mm-hmm.
was definitely something that as a kid, it was like, if I can't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is something that I've had to unlearn over the years. And I don't know that I made a super conscious effort for it. Um, I've always read a lot of self-help books. I've always listened to a lot of thought leaders in that genre. So I don't know that I made a conscious effort towards shifting that belief of I can learn from every mistake and every failure, but I certainly live by that now. I wouldn't ever think if I fail, I'm a failure now. But I certainly used to live in that
Mm-hmm.
perfectionistic kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the other thing, and I didn't have this so much because my mom was always, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to follow a traditional life path. But I think a lot of people, particularly women my age, your age, were taught you have to follow this traditional life path of you should be a nurse or a teacher or an administrative assistant. Like those were your options.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of women, your mom, like she broke that mold.
Yes.
She did not follow that path.
No, she
And
did
so
not.
she unlearned those societal timelines a long time ago and set a trend for other women to follow. And so learning that there's not one right way to live is really important.
I think that if I use my mom as one of those examples,
Yeah.
she did, was it that she did not grab onto the assumptions and the values that were trying to be enforced or inflicted on, or that she let go of those things that were holding her back? And it wasn't that she would even consciously have thought about this is holding me back and therefore I'm going to challenge it. She just said, no, this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I will find a way to make it happen. How else could she have gone about that and gotten her pilot's license at 40 years old, in the mid 60s.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love my mom. I miss her dearly, but she lives in me. And it's, and every once in a while, I'm going to just true confession. Every once in a while, I think about how when I'm playing small, I am disrespecting the model that she
Mm.
provided.
Hmm.
I'm disrespecting what she demonstrated with how she lived. And so I, I'm, so now I have to stop talking.
Carla's mom, I never met her, but man, the stories. What a woman.
Yeah.
What a woman.
Yeah.
And the apple did not fall far from that
Oh,
proverbial tree.
bless you.
So when we think of other common barriers to unlearning, like we stick to old beliefs because they're what we've known. It's
Hmm.
comfort, it's familiar, right?
Yes.
And I think somewhere in there also comes some fear of judgment because
Hmm.
if we are changing our minds about a belief that we've had and other people know we have that belief, and now all of a sudden we're like, I don't believe that anymore. People are going to be like, what? Like you were willing to die on the sword for that belief last week. Now all of a
Hmm.
sudden you don't believe it anymore.
It's right up there with boundaries, isn't it? I mean, when you start changing those, what the heck is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think a lot of times those beliefs that we carry are part of our identity, right? So if we start to let go of some of those beliefs, what's my identity? That can be scary. So I
It's
think
like a
there's a
free
lot of
fall.
barriers to that unlearning as well.
I think the letting go is probably the action that that underscores this unlearning that we're talking about.
Hmm.
If being able to identify, and then it's not just letting go, it's got to be replaced by something. Otherwise, it's a void and a vacuum. So letting go of a something that no longer serves you.
Hmm.
I think that's what the unlearning really comes down to.
Yeah, I would agree. I would
And
agree.
then finding that action, that thought, that value, whatever it is that fills in that spot that was vacated by something that you let go of that isn't serving you.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, again, like you said, noticing the thought, challenging that narrative. It's
Mhm.
like there's a theme here and all these things that we've been talking about the
Yeah.
last several episodes, right?
Yes.
Replace it with a new thought, a new truth, a new belief. I've recently had conversations with a couple women who are of the belief that productivity equals success.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, we got to rescript that. We got to flip that script,
That's
right?
like chickens in a hen house, right? Eggs, eggs, eggs,
Exactly.
eggs. So,
Exactly. You don't have to be productive 24/7. Rest is necessary. Rest is important. Rest can help you grow.
mhm.
So there's been some very interesting conversations, but that is a strongly held belief that they have.
Wow.
And so unlearning that is going to take a lot of unbraiding and a lot of unwinding. And again, it's going to come down to challenging that narrative when it comes up. It's going to require a small step. And I think trying to surround yourself with new perspectives, whether that's reading
Mhm.
a book like Let Them, uh, listening to podcasts, talking to people who are willing to challenge, who have challenged those outdated beliefs, and really expanding your mindset. And I think unlearning a thing is just as hard as learning a thing. It's not going to happen overnight, it's going to take time. And so you got to be patient.
Love yourself through it.
Yes. What a great phrase.
And what a great way to wrap up this notion of unlearning. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, and like unlearning isn't about, I just want to make really clear, unlearning is not about erasing the past.
No.
It
Mm-mm.
is about reclaiming your future.
Boom. Please
With
repeat
that,
that. Please repeat that.
unlearning is not about erasing your past. It is about reclaiming your future. With that, I'm Doc Shelley.
And I am Carla Lewis, and that's it.
That's a wrap. We'll see you next time.
letting go of something that no longer serves you. I think that's what the unlearning really comes down to.
I would agree. I would agree.
And then finding that action, that thought, that value, whatever it is that fills in that spot that was vacated by something that you let go of that isn't serving you.